Hi, class. I'm going to read chapters 4 through 6, Sing Down the Moon. It starts on page 19 if you want to follow along. Our Hogan was quiet that night. All the Hogans in our village were quiet. The long knives threat hung over us. Had our young warriors been home, there would have been much talk and chanting and threats against the long knives. But there were only women and children who had nothing to say, and old men who had seen the power of the white man and feared it. The evening fires went out early. The night was long, and I was glad when dawn came. At the first gray light, I opened the gate and drove the sheep across the river and up the trail. As the sheep bells tinkled in the silent canyon, I sang little songs to myself. Some were happy and some were not, but all of them were meant for the ears of the gods who listen. When I reached the mesa, the sky was gold along the edges and pink overhead. With my black dog, I drove the flock beyond the aspen grove to a place where the grass was uncropped. Running Bird came soon, and the two flocks grazed together. My sheep were easy to find because they were marked with red dye, a red circle on each ear. That afternoon, when the sun was hot, I would mark the 10 sheep my mother had given me, using 2 red circles to show that they were mine. Running Bird began to talk about the soldiers. I listened to her, nodding and making polite sounds, but I was thinking about my sheep all the time. The ewes my mother had given me would lamb in the summer. When spring came again, I might have 20 or 30 sheep of my own to drive to the mesa. 30 sheep! The thought made me dizzy with happiness. Right at that moment, Running Bird asked me what my father had said about the soldiers. I jumped up and began to dance. I could not help it, thinking of 30 sheep grazing in the meadow, each one with 2 red circles on its ears. Clouds drifted in from the north, but they were spring clouds, white as lamb's wool. In the stream that wandered across the mesa, speckled trout were leaping, jays were chattering in the aspen trees, and 2 little red-tailed hawks came and hovered over the meadow. It was the barking of my black dog that first alarmed me. None of the sheep had strayed. Everything was peaceful in the meadow. There was no reason for him to bark. Then, close to the aspen grove, I saw 2 long shadows. I saw their shadows before I saw the men. They were not soldiers because they did not wear bright buttons on their coats and bright claws around their necks. They were dressed in deerskin with tall hats and silver spurs, riding horses that had heavy silver bits. They were Spaniards. I jumped to my feet. They rode up at a trot and reined in a few paces away. The one who spoke had a soft voice and many white teeth and long black hair. "A fine day," he said, "but we are lost. Which is the quick way to Corn Mountain?" I knew little Spanish then, not so much as I do now, yet I understood him. I pointed to the northwest and said that there was a trail near the rim of the canyon and that Corn Mountain was 2 leagues beyond as the eagle flies. While I was saying this, I saw something that I should have seen before. The other Spaniard held the reins of 2 horses, which he had been leading. Their saddles were empty, and I knew in the time a breath takes that these men were slavers. For many years now, they had come to the Navajo country and stolen girls to sell to families in the town who needed girls to cook for them and to wash their floors. One of the Navajo girls had escaped and come back to Canyon de Shelly and told us what had happened to her. The man with the white teeth glanced in the direction I was pointing, but from the corner of my eye, I saw the other Spaniard come toward me. Running Bird screamed and fled across the meadow and screamed a second time. The Spaniard who had asked me the question caught her long before she reached the trail. Suddenly there was a cloth in my mouth and my hands were behind me and tied hard with a thong. My black dog was rushing around, barking and nipping at their heels. The Spaniard, who had a flat-shaped head and a yellow scar on his chin, struck him with a rifle and he lay still. Then they put us on the 2 horses they had brought and tied our hands to the saddle horns. "We will not harm you," the Spaniard with the white teeth said. "You will like the place you are going. Do not try to flee." We went south along the mesa. As we passed the head of the trail, I looked for White Deer, hoping that she would be coming up with her flock and would see us. I saw no one. We took the dawn trail to the lowlands and at dusk reached the river far below our village. And I'm going to stop there. This is when it's getting good because the girls were captured, and we're going to find out what happens to them along the way here. I'm going to read chapter 5 in the next one.